Hello, I'm Justin Wheeler, and welcome to this episode of Nonstop Nonprofit. Welcome back, nonprofit friends. Nonstop Nonprofit has a whole new season ahead, and we're kicking it off with a compilation series loaded with live interviews from AFP ICON 2022. Hang out at our booth with us and talk to nonprofit's brightest stars about trends, impact, and the future of fundraising. As a bonus, we're capping this series off with the best clips from last season. So if you're new to the podcast, stick with us. You'll get all the goods in a fraction of the time. Episode 3 of our compilation series features Karen Houghton, Brett Heinrich, Shiri Skinner, and Mallory Erickson. Let's dive in. It is your number one priority to ensure that your business can continue to deliver on its mission, whether it's this year, next year, and beyond.
So we're creating this inclusive environment, building between diverse communities to ensure that our young people can thrive.
I'm always so baffled when I do webinars. There's always somebody at the end who raises their hand and says, I'm the development director. Should I have access to the budget? I'm always like, yes, you've got to know that.
The best thing you can ever do as a nonprofit leader is spend as much money as possible on your story.
Then you're doing it wrong.
Okay.
That is unacceptable, and that is not the way to run a board.
The best thing that we can do is just raise as much money as possible and then give it to the people around the world.
If you're going to be sustainable, you have to have a multi-channel strategy to reach all of these different generations of donors however they want to be reached.
One of the principal values that we carry as an organization is to lift grace over guilt. And we believe that grace is the greatest agent for change that anyone can ever experience.
We all need each other in terms of other nonprofits working together to solve things.
The more nonprofits can give their donor base that experience of the impact that's being made on the ground level, there's nothing else you have to give someone. This is Nonstop Nonprofit. In this segment, Karen Houghton, CEO and founder of Infinite Giving, brings high-level investment planning to the nonprofit world. It's an exciting concept. Hear why nonprofits that want to fire back at inflation, take a long-game approach to program funding, or make stock donations attractive and easy need a tool designed for them. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about Infinite Giving.
Infinite Giving is an automated investment platform. So we are the first robo-advisor built specifically for nonprofits. We help you hedge against inflation, grow your assets, and create and manage endowments.
What led you to start the platform?
Great question. I was an executive director and founder of a nonprofit.
Okay.
So I came from that. I understand scarcity mindset. I understand difficult board conversations. And I then later in life had a 9-year career in tech startups. So advising tech startups, working with them, and also got into venture capital. I also serve on 3 nonprofit boards, one for higher education. So I have this really unique blend of board experience, being an executive director, walking in those shoes, and then also with this tech and venture capital and finance background, felt like Infinite Giving was this perfect blend of like what I was meant to build and how we could serve the people who needed it the most.
Was there like a specific moment that you had encountered just a challenge with, whether it's accepting stock donations or on the investing platform side, that led you to wanting to start Infinite Giving?
Yeah, I think a lot of was like, what am I uniquely made in my experience to, what problem is that to solve? And looking at the investment opportunities that nonprofits have is very traditional.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of opportunities that actually can decrease fees, that can make it easy to understand and approachable, that allows them to create endowments. So that it's just a very traditional industry. And a lot of it is just ripe for disruption and an opportunity for us to leverage technology to really, it's a very modern technology that allows them to really grow their giving.
Yeah. So, I mean, I imagine there are some challenges in getting nonprofits to change sort of their perspective on what to do with idle money sitting in the bank.
Yes.
Right? A lot of times organizations try to build up a cushion for a rainy day and so forth, aren't naturally inclined, unless they're bigger, to invest. So talk to us a little bit about how Infinite Giving helps sort of bridge that divide and educates nonprofits around investing opportunities?
Yeah, I think as most nonprofit leaders know, anything worth doing is hard.
Yeah, that's true.
And so a lot of it is education. We spend a lot of time talking to people and offering them a lot of data, right? Data doesn't lie. And so when you're looking at inflation, for instance, right now we have 8.5% inflation. Is this a forever thing? Surely we all hope not, right? But even when you're looking at, in a great economy, the Fed's target inflation rate is 2%. Now you look at a savings account, a money market, a CD, maybe 0.06%, 0.11%, right? And so what feels safe is an emotional decision that we're making. We're saying, all right, I'm going to put it away for a rainy day. It's in a savings account and I need it. But when an emergency happens and you actually go maybe 3, 4, 5 years down the road, you need to access that savings. It is no longer worth the same amount of money that it was before because of inflation. So anything sitting in a money market, savings account, or a CD is actively losing value. And so we really wanted to democratize access to conservative portfolios, right? We leverage ETFs and index funds. And a lot of that is also based off the data that decades of academic research has proven that over 90% of active wealth advisors cannot outperform index funds over a 5-year period. So that's where you've had this big rise of passive investing and robo-advising. So when we talk about robo-advising, that's using mathematical algorithms, right? And it's using technology to help you create investment decisions. And it's existed for over a decade. You've got Wealthfront, you've got Betterment, you've got Schwab Intelligent Portfolios. So they exist. Merrill Lynch has one. Everyone's got one.
Yeah.
It's only been available for retail customers. Like you and I personally could go invest. My husband and I have invested in Wealthfront for years. Great transparency, easy access to our funds, incredibly reduced fees. All those are wins for nonprofits. And so what Infinite Giving is we're the first robo-advisor that allows for entity investing. So we're bringing this technology that allows all of these great outcomes and helping nonprofits access those.
That's amazing. How's traction been so far? You mentioned about a year in to starting the business. So how are nonprofits responding to the technology?
Really well. And once they see our product, they want it. A lot of it is understanding. A lot of it is education around fees. I will say that probably 95% of the nonprofits we speak to do not understand or know their investment fees. And when you're talking about significant money going to third-party vendors that they shouldn't have to spend, it becomes really significant, but they don't understand what's reasonable, right? So Common Fund Institute did a big survey where they said the average endowment that's $25 million is paying an average of 1.34% in fees.
Wow.
So the question is that reasonable? Is that not? I've talked to others who are paying upwards of 2%, 2.5%. And so there's a lot of opportunities to decrease that by using technology, and that's what Infinite Giving provides. I literally did an RFP for an organization the other day, and I was like, great. Just on these fees, we're not even talking about asset growing, but just on these fees, we were going to save them close to $900,000 in third-party fees over 5 years.
Wow.
And yet they thought they had great fee structure.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's when that money could be going to like your mission or your bottom line, like it's not wrong because that's been what's available. Yeah. But now with Infinite Giving, you have different opportunities and you're able to put that money towards things that are more important.
Yeah. As part of your go-to-market, have you found that a lot of nonprofits already have like an active, like the ability to accept stock donations? I mean, you think about sort of like, where wealth is at. Mm-hmm. Very few people actually have cash just sitting in the bank, right? Individuals. It's usually in the markets to some degree. Yet so little nonprofits actually have the capabilities of accepting non-cash donations. And so how has that been in going to market, understanding sort of organizations' capacity? Have you had to do a lot of educating there, or have you found nonprofits have already been accepting stock donations to an extent?
Yeah, so as far as go-to-market, I mean, we're an investment platform. We are a registered investment advisor, so they still we're their outsourced CIO, we're their fiduciary, so we have technology, that's what we use, but we also have people if they need it. So you do get an investment advisor if you need them to join finance committee meetings or board meetings. I would say usually you kind of have two paths. You're a smaller nonprofit who is scared to invest, or you don't meet the high minimums, or you don't want to pay really high fees, and you're in a savings account money market. And so that's where we're talking about hedging against inflation and educating that way. If they are currently investing, then often it's about understanding fee structure, understanding, what a diversified portfolio is, and why you should not manage that money yourself, right? In that board. So that's always the most affordable way, is just go do it yourself. But then it's like, do you really want to have fiduciary responsibilities? And then from there with stocks, so once you're on our platform, you're able to use we have several different gifting tools, which allows you to receive stocks for free, receive crypto for free, and then create and manage endowments. And we even have a unique endowment gifting tool.
Oh, wow.
So all that to say is, to your point, high wealth donors carry the majority of their money not in cash.
Yeah.
And it's because they understand inflation.
Yeah.
And they know, hey, if I leave my money sitting in a savings account, I'm going to be actively losing value, so I'm going to put it into the market.
Yeah.
And it's the most tax efficient way to give. So when you're asking donors to give you cash, that means they're like, okay, I'm going to have to go sell these stocks. I'm going to pay long-term capital gains on those. And then it's a lot of manual back and forth. And then they have to eventually, whatever they end up giving, the nonprofit has a smaller gift left, right? And so most nonprofits receive stocks. Or they know we can do that.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, oh, they're like, yeah, we can do that.
Download
you
this
gotta
PDF.
call.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. Can I download this, 10-page form and then wet ink and fax it to whatever, and then your guy's got to call my guy, and then blah, blah, blah. And so what we've done is we've created a custom URL that makes it really easy. They have 4 things to fill out. That's like, here, I'm going to gift you these 100 Apple shares. Here's what I want to do. And they can embed it into an email, into a button on their website. And then from there, once they fill that out, the nonprofit gets notified, says, hey, Karen Houghton's going to give you 100 Apple shares. Get ready for it and keep an eye out on it. And then when we receive those shares, we liquidate them immediately and reinvest it into a diversified portfolio.
Okay.
So the idea is, right now, can most people, if they would like to, figure out how to open a brokerage account? Yes. It takes weeks. It takes paper. It's really painful. We do a fully digital brokerage account opening in about 15 minutes for an entity account.
Wow.
And then from there, with the stock gifting, we provide transparency. So you can go in and say, great, I didn't actually have to do anything as a nonprofit. I just was like, oh, I received it, and I just get to say thank you.
Yeah.
And then we're able to do that. And that's how we're doing crypto as well, is that you'll just be able to receive that, and then we immediately turn it to fiat cash and then reinvest it into a diversified portfolio.
Got it. On the on the stock side, how big is the stock giving market? Do you know how much annually is given through stock donations? Is that monitored?
That's a good question. I know Russell James did a study that showed that if you start asking for cash gifts and stock gifts, you can grow your giving up to 55%,
Wow.
which I find extraordinarily high.
Yeah.
And it's not like this magic, if I do this and put this on my website, it's all going to come in.
Yeah.
So it's still education, but it's certainly a increasingly popular conversation because it's been an untapped opportunity by most nonprofits.
Yeah.
And when you're telling these high wealth donors, hey, this is the most tax efficient way to give. You won't have to pay long-term capital gains. Oh, by the way, we make it really easy for you. You don't have to call somebody. And then they get a higher deduction off the gift, and the nonprofit is able to receive that. It's really helpful. And I think the gifts tend to be significantly higher on average as well than a cash gift.
I think I heard something like the average stock donation was $6,000 or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is significantly more than cash.
Yeah, and cash gift $20 here, $20 there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so a lot of it is about intentionality, education, and creating easy opportunities for those donors to connect with you.
So you're a year in. What does the next couple of years have in store? What are you excited about, whether on the technology side that you guys are building, growth plans? What are you looking forward to over the next couple of years?
Absolutely. We look forward to being the asset management and investment platform that all nonprofits use. So there's no one else out there doing what we're doing the way we're doing it, and it's what's best for the customer, which is the nonprofit. So it's able to reduce fees. Our dashboard's so intuitive. It's really easy to use. You have access to your money. You can have multi-users log in, and you can have different, permissions. So, hey, you want to see that? Great, but you can't actually move money, right? So you can create those permissions, and it just allows a lot of accountability and transparency. And what I personally would love to see is a rise in micro endowments, because I think that's endowments are not for everybody, right? You got to get out of that scarcity mindset. You got to build your reserves.
Yeah.
But the idea that endowments are only for higher education, I think small to mid-sized nonprofits are missing out on a huge opportunity. And that's an incredible opportunity also to build sustainability. And I think too many people don't understand endowments. Like, it's not just restricted endowments anymore. Like, we only do quasi endowments or unrestricted endowments. And the idea that an endowment is something that you can use to fund a scholarship, to fund a program, to fund salary increases. We're working with an independent school right now, and their endowment is literally so they can use that disbursement to give all of their teachers raises.
Oh, wow.
Cool. And I'm like, that's so important. And yes, do you know how, like, we can help you build a campaign around that. Like, there's a lot of like easy ways to do that. And you're like, yes, people will still give to operations. A lot of it is about the story you tell.
Yeah.
And what higher ed has shown us is that high wealth donors want to give endowments.
Yeah.
Do you know how big Harvard's endowment is?
If I had to guess, I want to guess multi-billions.
$53 billion.
Wow.
Stanford's $33 billion.
Wow.
And God bless those schools. I'm happy for them. But like, I think most of us listening to this would be like, they're good.
Yeah.
Like, they don't need more, you know?
Yeah,
so it's like,
seriously.
how do we give other people the tools to be able to receive that? Because high wealth donors want to give endowments. It's the easiest story to tell.
Yeah.
A gift that you give once that builds sustainability and a legacy and gets passed generation to generation.
Yeah.
And if it's unrestricted, then and you're starting to look at long-term goals, right? If you're not setting 10, 20-year goals, don't do an endowment. But if you are and you're like, hey, no, we're going to be in existence, we're seeing this long-term path, then you have the opportunity to start asking for endowment gifts. And we have like a donor portal where they can log in and they see it named after them. And we have really subtle asks where it's like, would you like to add to your endowment? And we let them add stock and cash gifts into their endowment, and they can invite people into that.
Wow.
So it's almost like you're crowdfunding this endowment. We have a little activity feed where it's like, oh, you know, cousin so-and-so added to it or so-and-so. And so even though they're small, the idea is that every year they're excited and feel connected. Because usually if you give an endowment, like I've spoken with people here today at AFP ICON that's like, hey, an endowment, we feel really disconnected, or we don't know what to do with it. And I think that's a great opportunity for us to change the story we're telling and tap into more opportunity.
Yeah, that's amazing. So setting the endowment aside real quick, because as you mentioned, it's not for every nonprofit. I think there's probably like a size capacity thing. All the other services and products that you do offer, for nonprofits listening, like what's the Bright profile or cash minimum requirement to get started with infinite giving? Yeah,
our minimum investment is $25,000.
Okay.
And then we serve customers up to $100 million essentially.
Okay.
So we right now, I think our sweet spot's going to be in that between kind of 1 and 50 million, which is a massive difference, right?
Yeah.
I think when you're getting over 100 million, there's just some different challenges and different types of boards. And they also often have the ability to diversify into real estate and different things, right? So we're looking at just simplifying ETFs, index funds, having fiduciary responsibilities, and growing your asset, giving it away that's really approachable and easy to understand.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. Yeah. All right, so I have some rapid fire questions.
Let's go.
Ask.
Let's do it.
There's no wrong or right answer.
Wait, do I get to ask these questions back to you?
Sure. Yeah, you're the first one to ask that, actually, but you're welcome to. All right, movies or series?
Series.
Which is your favorite series?
Oh gosh, depends on the day you ask me.
What are you actively watching? What's in your queue now that you're the most interested in?
I'm panicking. I can't even tell you right now, because here's what happens is I go really deep and I watch it all, and then I'm like, great, done, next.
Yeah, next,
And then I just consume. It's like how I read books. I read books like I watch movies, where I'm like, great, I sit down, I read that whole book in 3 days, and then I just have to come up for air.
Okay.
But I love series. How about you?
I'm serious too. I binged all of the the tech crashes on.
Absolutely.
So We Crash. It was super fascinating.
Man, We Crash, so fascinating.
Yeah.
That could be a whole podcast. It is a podcast.
It is. It is. It's like everything now. But what's crazy is I'm blanking on the actor's name now that plays Adam. But if you see them side by side, it's crazy how well he did. They did acts and he nailed it.
Yes.
And then also. What's it called? Super Pumped about the fall of Uber.
I don't know that one.
Of Travis.
Yeah. I haven't watched that one.
That one's pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
But
pretty sure that another one's going to be made about Twitter right now.
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Okay, tacos or cheeseburgers?
If it's a Tuesday taco, because it's Taco Tuesdays, but any other day cheeseburger.
Okay.
How about you?
I'm cheeseburger for sure.
I have a 6-year-old daughter. Well, she's about to be 6. She could eat cheeseburgers every single day, her whole life.
I have twins, 6-year-old twins,
there you
and
go.
that's what they ask for every day.
It's
a
the
hamburger
best
thin and out.
age.
Yeah.
Cheeseburgers are great too. It's the best age for cheeseburgers.
Yeah. Okay, beach or mountains?
Beach.
Beach.
We're in Atlanta, so we live right on that 30A, not far from, so it's like 5 hours. So we go to 30A, like the panhandle of Florida a lot.
Okay, yeah. And it's...
And we have Blue Ridge Mountains north of us, by like an hour and a half.
So you have both, but yeah,
Sure.
like if you had to live somewhere the rest of your life, I'm like beach, nice weather, not the ocean. I mean, not the mountains. Digital reading or an actual book?
Actual book.
Actual hardcover or soft?
Oh, good question. I love a good hardcover book, but I'm going to... Yeah, hardcover.
Hardcover.
I would say the practicality, I always buy softcover because they're more affordable.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend money on that. But yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm also...
hardcovers look better on bookshelves.
Yes, they're more decorative.
Yes.
I also prefer actual versus digital.
Yes. It's not, I'm on digital, like I'm computer, phones, all of that.
Yeah.
Someday at night, so I just want to,
It doesn't feel like I'm reading a book when it's on digital.
I need to be able to fold the little corner down.
Know the progress, see your promise more you have to go to end the book.
Yes.
It's important. Ice cream or froyo?
Ice cream.
Ice cream. Yeah.
Yes,
I think
feel
froyo,
passionately about
everyone
that.
has said ice cream. I think froyo's on its way out. I think it needs to go.
Yeah.
It's had its moment.
Yeah.
Football or football?
Well, I'm from Georgia,
Okay.
so absolutely go Bulldogs. National champs all the way.
So you're football.
Yeah.
Football.
Yeah, football. How about you?
I'm not a sports person.
Yeah, I married into it.
Yeah. Okay. So like there's only sports on the TV if a friend is over that's like interested in the game.
Yeah.
Or it's like the playoffs. And
That's a good friend. You're a good friend to do that.
Yeah, it's the only reason why I have cable for my friends. Moana or Aladdin?
Moana.
Or Encanto?
Moana.
Moana? Yeah.
I know.
That's
I like it.
It's too good. Too
Yeah.
good.
Although I can sing a lot of the Aladdin. That's like what we grew up on, right?
Yeah.
Moana for my daughter, Aladdin for
Aladdin
me.
for you, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for participating. Thanks for joining
Absolutely.
the podcast. I would love to do a deeper dive on just all things investing for nonprofits.
Right? This could be such a big conversation.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
Absolutely. So thanks for taking the time
Yeah.
to bring us up to speed today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. In this segment, Brett Heinrich, CEO of Wings of Hope and AFP board member, gives us some great examples of how necessity has resulted in innovative solutions. From the humble beginnings of Wings of Hope to the most recent pandemic hurdles and on to harnessing the power of technology, Wings of Hope has continued to increase care and impact where it is most needed. All right. Well, Brett, thank you so much for joining us here at Nonstop Nonprofit Podcast. How are you doing today?
Justin, I'm doing great. It's so exciting to be back in person with the conference. As a member of the AFP Global Board, we've been waiting for 3 years for this. We have nearly 3,000 fundraisers here this week.
So how did you get involved with AFP? I mean, you're a nonprofit leader, which we're going to get into. Why did you decide to take on the extra responsibility and join the board at AFP?
AFP was really the best career decision I ever made. As I started in nonprofit work, I was a program person and was asked to take over and develop a development department, and I had no idea what I was doing. So AFP became my lifeline, and I stayed involved all these years, and it has really been the source of inspiration, of learning, of creativity, and of successful fundraising for me.
In regards to the pandemic, so it's been virtual for the last 3 years, or has it just been postponed? How has it caused you as a board to really think through AFP moving forward? I mean, yeah.
Well, everybody's favorite COVID word, pivot. We learned to pivot quickly, and literally the first year we went from in-person to virtual almost overnight. When we were shut down and couldn't proceed. So we learned quickly how to use technology in a new way, how to make resources available to our constituents in a new way. But what we couldn't replace is the fellowship you get at an event like this. And so we're just so excited that people are back together.
Yeah, it's great to be back. I love AFP. And so thank you for all the hard work that you guys have done to make this happen. Rhett, you run a very interesting nonprofit, and maybe for just kind of kickstart that conversation, tell us a little bit about your nonprofit, what you guys do at a high level, and then we'll kind of dig into some of the interesting programs you guys are running.
Absolutely, Justin. So I'm the president and CEO of an organization based in St. Louis, Missouri called Wings of Hope. and we're a global humanitarian organization that uses airplanes to save and change lives. We fly into some of the most remote locations around the world to provide humanitarian assistance. Places as far-flung as the Amazon rainforest, the plains of Tanzania. We also transport people in the United States that cannot access specialized care in their communities. So, for example, a child with severe club foot and there's no orthopedic surgeon for miles and miles. We'll transport that child and mom or dad as many times as it takes at no cost until the child is healed.
Wow. And what was the inspiration for, did you start the nonprofit, or what's like the founding kind of like the startup story of the organization?
I am so glad you asked. We have a great startup story. It began 60 years ago. There were Catholic Charities relief efforts going on in Kenya. And one of the relief efforts involved some of the world's first flying nuns. So the nuns were flying into this desert area of Kenya, providing relief. And they were flying a plane that had wooden wings with canvas stretched across the wings. And the desert conditions were beating up on that plane pretty badly. So the canvas began to peel back from the edge of the planes. And at night, when the nuns would park their plane and go in for the evening, with that glue exposed, the hyenas were really attracted to the taste of that glue.
Oh, wow.
And they would come out at night, and they were literally eating the nuns' airplane.
Wow.
So our founders in St. Louis heard about this and decided, we can't let the hyenas continue to eat the nuns' airplane. So they raised the money, purchased an aluminum aircraft, and sent it to Kenya. That became the very first Wings of Hope aircraft. And so I say we owe our humble beginnings to the nuns and the hyenas.
Wow. That's great. That's a great startup story. I love it. You mentioned that when the pandemic hit, your organization had to rethink the way that it delivered the services and products that you were delivering around the world. Talk to us a little bit about the process to get to where you landed, and then what was the actual outcome of the innovation that took place as a result of the pandemic.
Most definitely. Virtually all of our 10 field bases were shut down during the early days of the pandemic. But people were still hurting. People still needed care that they couldn't access based on where they live. And that was particularly true in our work in Ecuador, where we work with a non-governmental organization called Alas de Socorro. And Alas de Socorro and Wings of Hope were unable to fly into the rainforest to provide relief to the 8 indigenous tribes we work with, because bringing in COVID, of course, could have been devastating to those tribes.
Yeah.
So it set us thinking about, what can we do? What can we do to provide relief when we physically can't be in the rainforest? So next week, I'm on my way to Ecuador with my team, and we're setting up a drone program so we can deliver anti-venom, or we can deliver medicine and other life-saving supplies when we can't physically be in the rainforest.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Have you thought about, as a former fundraiser myself, I think about, wow, this opportunity, to drop off goods using drones, and thinking about like, how do you bring the donor into that experience? Well, have you thought about how the donor might be able to interact or see the impact for themselves using something like a drone, which you can obviously capture aerial view shots and so forth? Have you thought about how that might also impact kind of your fundraising efforts moving forward?
Most definitely. In fact, going with us as a film crew to document this experience.
Oh, wow.
And they will be with us for a week. We'll be spending the night in the rainforest to capture the full experience in the rainforest. And we're hopeful that this really turns into something that our donors can see and feel and hear and touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, you guys have been nominated for 2 Nobel Peace Prizes. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So how does an organization like yours even get nominated in the first place? What's the process to how you get actually nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, first and foremost, we're so humbled to even be in that realm.
Yeah.
It is such an honor to even be nominated. And it takes someone to become aware of the work you're doing. Our nomination, we believe, was based largely on our work throughout Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, to reduce infant mortality rates among the Maasai that live in sub-Saharan Africa. And we were nominated. It's a very secretive process. In fact, they don't release the name of the nominators for 50 years.
Oh, wow.
And so we're happily nominated. We don't necessarily, we think we know who nominated us, but we're waiting a few more years.
A few more years to find out.
Okay. To find out, yeah.
That's exciting. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's definitely something to be very, very proud of.
Yeah.
So you guys are doing very important work, helping people around the world. What's your motivation? Like, why did you get involved and step in as the CEO of the organization? I'd love to learn a little bit more about your passion for the work that you guys are doing.
Justin, my personal values and beliefs, my personal mission statement has always been to ensure every child has the opportunity to reach her or his full potential. And that's really what we're doing at Wings of Hope. We are ensuring that everyone has access to a better life. That's our vision.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that no matter where you live in the world, you can have healthy babies, you can have your wounds taken care of, you can have the supplies that you need without any strings attached. We're not going to ask you to change your culture or beliefs, just to continue to allow us to let you serve the basic needs that you feel you need.
Got it.
So that's been my motivation. I am so pleased to be able to run an organization that shares in that motivation.
Yeah, that's amazing. Amazing. As you look towards the future, what are you excited about? What's the potential that you see as the organization kind of continues to iterate on its innovation and continues to help more and more people? What are you excited about as you look forward into the near future?
Again, with COVID, it taught the world to think differently, and we're seeing a proliferation of telehealth here in the United States. And that's something we're interested in taking into remote communities. I flew in with our good friend in Zambia, who's the country's only reconstructive surgeon for an entire country. And we spent half of our day triaging patients because that was what we had to do. And there was really no clear path for him to monitor his patients from a remote location. So we're working with just some terrific people to make this happen, where we can set up a telehealth link that will allow us to triage patients before we arrive, to follow up with them afterwards. That, and ultimately, I see an opportunity for Wings of Hope and the entire global humanitarian ecosystem to engage volunteers broadly. Wings of Hope has 350 amazing volunteers, including our young ambassadors that are expanding now from St. Louis to Atlanta. And eventually I see a global movement of people around the world supporting efforts like Wings of Hope.
Got it, yeah. And then the last question here for you is, what would you say Wings of Hope's greatest challenge is today? What's maybe holding it back from scaling or growing or helping more people? What keeps you up at night as a leader, thinking about the challenges that you're trying to overcome to continue pushing the organization forward?
I think like a lot of nonprofit organizations, it's matching the organization's strengths with its capacity. We are poised to do really exciting things. Our team is so great, and we have so many great partners in our global humanitarian network, but we have to stay focused on a plan that allows us to expand in a very responsible way. So while we want it all today, we know it may be until tomorrow before we get it all there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Brett, so as we close here, I want to ask some rapid fire questions. Favorite movie or series?
Favorite movie? Rocky.
Rocky. Ooh, that's a good one. Tacos or cheeseburgers?
Tacos.
Beach or the mountains?
Mountains.
Digital reading or an actual book?
Actual book all the way.
I feel you on that one too. Ice cream or froyo?
Ice cream.
Oh yeah, we're like the same person here so far. Yeah. Football or football?
Football, Chicago Bears style.
There you go. Oh, Moana or Aladdin?
Oh my goodness, I'm old school, so I'll go with Aladdin.
Aladdin, you can't go there. Yeah, that's wrong. Awesome. All right, well, Brett, thank you so much for participating. Loved having you on the podcast, and look forward to bringing you back on, talk more about your amazing programs.
Thank you, Justin. A real honor. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yep.
In this segment, Sherry Skinner, Director of Development and Communication at New Futures, AFP presenter, and idealist, reminds us that nonprofiteers are the best people in the world. From pride in our work to tackling new challenges to progress on our long journey to equity, it's easy to forget that nonprofits are literally making the world a better place. Sherry, thank you so much for joining the Nonstop Nonprofit podcast. I heard you're a rock star in podcasts.
This is my first one. I'm going to be a rock star.
There you go. How has AFP been so far?
It's been great. I love being around my colleagues. You know, we're in a very unique profession, and it's part of coping to come together with your colleagues.
Yeah.
You learn a lot, too. You know, the session that I had today, we make sure that it's very interactive because we learn from each other.
Yeah.
Not just from listening to, you know, the presenter or being a presenter. So I love coming to AFP.
Yeah, it's great to be back in person.
Yes,
like you said, and it's you know, the energy, the momentum. I love that, and so
yes,
definitely glad to be back in person. You've been a fundraiser for a while,
a long time. Guess how many years?
12.
31.
31 years. How has the industry changed over 31 years?
Well, it's definitely changed in what funders want to know about your organizations.
Okay.
I think when I first started, you know, I started at a police athletic league. Are you familiar with them?
Police athletic league.
So kind of like an after school, summertime youth development organization. And back then we could just say, oh, we're going to serve 1,000 kids this year. Give us the money. And just because we had the numbers and we were in certain neighborhoods, you know, we didn't have to provide a lot of data. There wasn't a lot of, say, before and after. So that has changed quite a bit now. Definitely more data and metrics driven. And even your individual donors want to know exactly what is your impact and how are you measuring that. So it's changed quite a bit.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously you've been around for the ride and you're enjoying it.
Absolutely.
How do you see yourself for the next 31 years being a fundraiser?
I can't imagine not being a fundraiser. You meet the best people. I think philanthropists, you know, I'm an idealist. I think you have to be an idealist to work in the nonprofit sector. And so it's like, I really feel like I want to change the world and I want to help other people change the world. And I think we all have a role to play, whether that be somebody who's volunteering or somebody that's writing a ginormous check, whatever, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
Or, you know, a person like me who's on staff. The program delivery people, right? All those things have to come together. So
yeah. What's one of your proudest moments as a fundraiser?
Wow, I've had a lot of them. Recently, I managed a 30th anniversary event for an after-school organization in DC, and they had never hosted a fundraising event of that scale before.
Yeah.
I remember when I said we have to raise more than $100,000 and we have to do, you know, X, Y, and Z. And really, they kind of looked at me like it was an impossible task. And yet it came together. We exceeded all the goals that were set. And we had this amazing event for this, you know, hyper-local organization in DC. And our founder was there. And we had a journalist who served as our master of ceremonies, and he was just so awesome. I don't know if you know the name Bruce Johnson, but Bruce Johnson was from WUSA 9, and it was just an enormous event. It was a huge milestone for the organization, and the fact that we were able to celebrate it the way that we did was really fantastic.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, very exciting. Yeah. And I exceeded all my fundraising goals, so that's always good. I left that organization. I'm starting with a new organization, but I left there. I went out with a bang.
You went out the bang. So, you know, I was a fundraiser for 12 years.
Okay.
And for me, like the hardest thing about fundraising was January 1st. Right? It feels like everything just like started over.
Yeah.
Like everything you had accomplished in that year, like it's almost like the clock sets it back to zero.
Yes.
Do you deal with that at all, or have you found ways around?
Well, I think it's one of those never-ending cycles, right? But I always think that the beginning of a new year is an opportunity to set a new goal and accomplish it.
Yeah.
So oftentimes, like, how many things can you work on at once? So, for an example, like, if you want to start a major donor society, for example, like, you could that could be your focus for 1 year, you get it done, And then the next year, maybe you're working on the Legacy Society.
Yeah.
Or you're working on that event or something else.
Yeah.
So I think, the start of a new year is an opportunity to add something to your development portfolio.
I like that. That's a good perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're here at AFP. You spoke this morning or this afternoon.
This afternoon, yeah.
The topic was what it's like to be a Black fundraiser in a mostly white philanthropic environment. Is that correct?
That's close.
That's close.
That's really close. Yep. That's
Okay.
in essence what it was about.
So yeah, dig into that. Help me understand what is it like. What are the challenges that you face in this environment? And I have another question, but I'll pause.
Well, I think one, the statistics are staggering. How much of a minority we are in the nonprofit sector, and especially in leadership positions. So 87% of nonprofit CEOs in the United States, 87% are white.
Wow.
So what does that mean? Only 13% are Black, right?
Yeah.
Or other race.
Yeah.
Right? So then we look at board chairs. 83% of board chairs in nonprofit organizations are white. I mean, the numbers are staggering.
Yeah.
So I think for us, that means that we are walking into the room. One, we got to interview with people that don't look like us, who don't know the challenges that we come with. We're working with philanthropists that don't look like us. And sometimes you have a feeling that you should not be your authentic self, right? That maybe you should pretend to be something else or try to be more like the person that you're talking to.
Yeah.
And so having very candid conversations about preconceived notions, about the environments that we work in. I know for me, I bring my past to my work, my philanthropic work. And it's one of the things that motivates me to help level the playing field for underserved, underrepresented, populations. And so you can either make that, the passion and your drive, or you can kind of get caught up in it and not have the best career experience, not be as successful a fundraiser as you possibly could be, because it's a weight. It's a heavy weight that you carry with you carry it with you every day.
Right. You mentioned in your session it's interactive.
Yes.
And you're looking around here, it's mostly white people. So what was the interaction that individuals were a part of? I'd love to hear about that. And how did people respond in the session?
So what's interesting is that AFP does an annual study, their IDEA study every year on race and nonprofits and all of that, and it's coming from the association, and they have found that 90% of their members are white. So, but we're here, we're out here.
Yeah.
But for some reason, a lot of Black fundraisers are not coming into AFP. I think that's often because they don't see themselves in the chapter, or there could be barriers. Sometimes we are working for small organizations that won't pay the membership fee, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So you're asking about the session. We wanted this session to be very diverse, but we knew that because of the topic, we're going to be a lot of people of color in the audience, and there were. And one of our white attendees stood up and said, it's great to see all these people of color, but really this session is for people like me, for the white guy,
Yeah.
And there were a few people that raised their hand and said, whoa, I'm white. But it was 6 people.
Yeah.
So I think the lesson for us, we make it very interactive because we provide time for people to turn and talk to each other on some of the discussion topics. We allow people to stand up, come up to a microphone, and bring up a topic that they're wrestling with based on what we've presented. So very, very interactive. I mean, to the point where we had to sort of shut it down from all the questions and everything.
Yeah.
But I think what we want to accomplish is to tell people that you can have these candid kind of conversations, and there's ways to have them.
Yeah.
We're going to help them articulate their experience so that they can explain it to other people, explain it to their CEO, executive director, say why maybe they don't feel supported in their role, and then explain how they could feel supported.
Yeah.
But we have to give them the language and the tools to be able to do that. And so providing the framework to say, this is what it looks like for me. I'm walking into a space that's mostly white. I want to be authentic, but maybe I'm afraid to be so.
Yeah.
You know, if your organization's CEO is not supporting you in being authentic, and maybe they're diminishing you in front of donors, then it's going to be hard for you to be successful.
Yeah.
But you can work with someone if they're not quite understanding what is going on.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to help people do.
Got it. You know, I hear a lot of organizations who are predominantly white, you know, when they talk about how they're trying to diversify, like the team, you know, kind of justify it by saying, hey, we opened up our recruiting and no one applied, right? Which I think is bullshit reason.
Right.
But what's your perspective to those people that say that? Like, obviously, I mean, I have some thoughts too, but I'd love to hear your perspective, because I hear that often, and I'm sorry, I feel like it's 2022. Like, this shouldn't really be the thought process today.
Well, I think a lot of times in the nonprofit sector, because we are lean organizations, we're unlike corporate America that can just throw money at problems, you know. But where we are posting openings is probably the first
place
issue, right? And a lot of times we use our networks. So if you're white, what's your network? Is your network mostly white?
Yeah.
But I'm a person of color. Is my network mostly white? No, it is not. So I think sort of getting out of whatever your sphere is or your bubble and increasing how positions are posted, seeking out different kinds of networks to post positions. I think, you know, our chapters are really good resources in that regard. I'm with the DC chapter. We have a Black affinity group with the DC chapter. And there are other affinity groups, too, that you can, you know, get to, maneuver to within different chapters. So that's one of the things I would definitely suggest. And making an intentional effort to reach out to candidates of color, minority candidates, whatever that definition is. But you can't do it the same way you've always done it and then expect a different result, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Do you have hope that our industry will get better at this, or?
Oh, it definitely will. I mean, like I said from the beginning, we're the idealists, right? We're the do-gooders, and the communities that we're helping are, I think, pushing us. One, you know, you've heard this expression, community-centric fundraising, right?
Yeah.
So our communities are pushing us to work differently. And that, I think, in turn is going to ripple out and have us really look at ourselves, look at the industry, and look at how we're doing some of these things, like you said, like recruiting and whatnot.
I think also like democratizing the purse strings, right? I mean, you think about at the grant-making level, the way that decisions are being made on funding is often boardroom decisions, not people on the ground, on the front lines, you know, who would have a much better say on how funds should be dispersed and where they should go. In your experience, have you seen sort of like even a lack of diversity in funding because of how it's controlled?
You know, I really haven't seen that. In my experience, you know, and I've worked with all different kinds of funding organizations, from companies to, you know, medium-sized foundations or family foundations. I think the onus is somewhat on us as a fundraiser to make the connection why the organization is worthwhile. And that may mean that we are sending information to a funder for a couple of years before they actually fund us, that we are initiating some conversations with them. A lot of information, public foundations, there's a lot of information out there that you can find out about them, what their portfolio looks like. And so I think we have to have those, you know, they could even be awkward conversations to say, you know, we've looked at your portfolio. We think we'd be a good fit for your portfolio, and here's why. And then to continue having those conversations with the funder or the program director or whoever that is. So I think some of the onus is on us. I do think, you know, all of us in the sector need to, you know, sort of look in the mirror and take a close examination of who we are, a realistic, you know, view of who we are and how we're operating. Some organizations are doing a better job at that than others. And I don't know that we'll ever eliminate, you know, implicit biases completely. but we can move the needle, I think.
Yeah. I mean, having like open conversations in the workplace about it, it's not enough, but it's a starting point, right?
Right,
to
exactly.
At least, bring to the table what's happening and what's important to discuss and to work towards.
I agree with that. And that's one of the things that we said a lot today, that, this is a way to put some of this stuff on the table.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think as a Black fundraiser, like, you go through these cycles and you don't even understand where you are in the cycle. But we provided, like today, language for people to articulate. Here's some scenarios, and here's one that I've been a part of, being a token person. So an organization identifies that we've got an issue with a lack of diversity. Let's hire a person of color. But then the person of color comes in, they're unsupported, the expectations are unrealistic. They're supposed to like solve world hunger on their own or something, So there's frustrations, and then they wind up leaving, and then the cycle kind of starts all over again, right?
We were actually, I was talking about this with Kashana a little bit yesterday. She talked about how a lot of times people of color, when they're given the CEO position, it's often in times of crisis.
Yes.
Right? Or there's no funding, or and so then like you look back and it was it's insane that
you're almost set up to fail.
You're set up to fail. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. 13%. That's hard to wrap my head around and to remain optimistic. But we got to take it one day at a time.
Yes. Yeah.
I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I don't know if I'm ready, but I'm gonna try to be ready.
Awesome. All right. So there's no wrong or right answer here.
All right.
Don't worry about it. Are you a movies or series person?
Movies.
Movies. What's your favorite movie?
Forrest Gump.
Oh, that's a great movie. That's a great movie. I love that movie.
And the other one, this is crazy. I don't know how these two things go together, but I really like Aliens.
Aliens.
The Alien series with Sigourney Weaver, but
the
the second one, not the first one.
The second. Usually
the
first one's always better, but
the Marines.
Yeah.
Okay. I really like that one.
Tacos or cheeseburgers?
Tacos. Yeah.
Steak, chicken, shrimp.
Shrimp. Yeah, I don't eat meat like that.
Beach. I was talking. Are you vegetarian?
Pescatarian.
Okay.
Yes.
I was talking to pescatarian yesterday. And they're like, I can't eat anything with a head on it still.
All right. See. Yeah.
Digital reading or an actual book?
Book. Got to turn those pages.
Hardcover or softcover?
Either.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hardcover stay home though, mostly.
Yeah, they're more decorative. They're better decorative, right?
You don't carry she's carrying the hardcover. That's great. I love it. She just bought that in the bookstore, right?
Yeah.
The AFP bookstore. Check it out, everybody.
Ice cream or froyo?
Ice cream.
Everyone has said ice cream. I think froyo is definitely going out.
No, because first of all, I think the frozen yogurt thing is like save some calories or something.
Yeah.
But then you wind up putting the cookies and the fudge on top of it anyway.
And
so
it just ends up
just
right
have
there.
the damn ice cream,
Football or football?
Oh, football.
Football.
Yeah.
All right.
American football.
Jets.
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 Gotta get that in. Okay.
I think Andrew's a Jets fan, right? No. Oh, Eagles. That's right.
No.
Moana or Aladdin?
Whoever.
Moana.
Aladdin.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I like the give me the wish thing.
The genie in a bottle.
Yeah, I like that idea. And Will Smith played a great. I know he's in trouble now, but he played a great Aladdin though. For real, he did. Okay.
Yeah. So that was my follow-up question. The original, which he gets very upset when I ask, or the live or the.
I like the Will Smith version.
Yeah, me too.
I did. I liked it.
Yeah, I like that one better too. Awesome. Well, thank you.
He's in trouble, not me. I didn't do nothing.
Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thanks, Justin.
Really
Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Good luck with everything.
In this segment, Mallory Erickson, executive coach, consultant, and AFP presenter, dives into what it means to be a nonprofit, not just in the 21st century, but in a pandemic-affected, increasingly digital, relationship as a gold standard online world. Mallory, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me.
How's AFP been so far?
It's been awesome. It's been so fun to see people in person and just the energy in the room. It's clear everyone's really grateful to be back together.
Yeah. This isn't your first in-person conference, is it?
Other than AFP Lead, it's my second.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
So pretty freshy.
Yeah. We were talking earlier. It feels kind of like post 2020 almost, or sorry, pre 2020, where a lot of people feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
To be around humans again. So
Yeah.
it's
really
a nice feeling.
nice. Yeah.
Nice feeling. We're going to talk about fundraising. If you could tell your younger self something that you know now as a more mature fundraiser, or something you could do differently as you were just getting started, what would that be? We have a lot of fundraisers listening, and so what would you say? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things because I was a fundraiser who hated fundraising for a very long time and felt super uncomfortable. I think the number one thing I would tell myself is that I'm not bothering people when I'm giving them invitations to be involved in our organization. Like, I think we have this narrative that we're bothering our donors all the time and they'll give a gift and we don't want to bother them by letting them know about a volunteer opportunity. We don't want to bother them by inviting them to this other thing that they might be interested. And we sort of have this narrative that they've given when they didn't really want to, or somehow they were kind of tricked into it. But like, all the data shows that retention really increases when people have an opportunity to do something personal in addition to giving the gift, or having that sort of peak moment with an organization close to a gift is incredibly impactful, that our donors actually really want to hear from us, and we're giving them a tremendous sense of identity in themselves when we continue to make those offerings and those invitations. I think as a young fundraiser, I just really felt insecure about that. Like, I was taking up space where the other person didn't necessarily want that relationship with me, and I would tell myself now that they really do, and they're really grateful for the opportunity to express themselves through giving.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I think donors, from my experience as well, I think are much more excited to actually engage and get involved and be invited to things, to feel connected to like the actual mission of the organization. It makes giving way easier. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course they're going to give. That's understood.
Yeah.
But inviting them into the experience of what it's like to be at the organization and connected to the impact, I think that goes a long way. And I think a lot of times as fundraisers, we get inside our heads and we think that the donor just wants to write the check and kind of be passive, where in reality, most people want to actually be involved because it's satisfying, right, to be close to that.
Yeah.
So you work with a lot of nonprofits, and as we kind of get it's crazy, halfway through 2022, where is this year going?
I know.
Gee, that's crazy. But I think like one of the, we've talked about this before, but one of the I think positive aspects of the pandemic was it forced nonprofits to really adopt and become more tech savvy and to really accelerate the way that they operate as organizations. How are you seeing in mid 2022? How are you seeing sort of like those learnings? Are they sticking with nonprofits? Are nonprofits going back to their old ways? What are you seeing within your clients that would be interested in that?
Yeah. It's interesting. I feel like at the beginning, I'd be curious like what you guys saw in this area too. But I feel like at the beginning, right when COVID hit, we saw this like paralysis for a bit, right? And then we saw this sort of differentiation, like nonprofits taking action, finding quick tech solutions, pivoting fast, and other nonprofits that stayed paralyzed. And a lot of those nonprofits didn't sort of make it through. And I feel like we're seeing a little bit of a similar pattern right now, where some organizations are getting sort of stuck in that, like, okay, what does the new future look like?
Yeah.
And kind of overanalyzing, like, what's the perfect way to fuse virtual events or hybrid events or in-person events. And then we're seeing others that are like, you know what? We still don't know exactly what this looks like, but we saw all this strength in having a bigger digital footprint or an easier way of giving online. So what if we test it? What if we A/B test it? What if we play with this? What if we try this? And I feel like that piece around just recognizing that it's an ever-shifting landscape. Someone said this quote yesterday that I cannot remember perfectly, but it was something like, there's no back to before, right? Like the goal of any growth is not to go back to a way things were.
Totally.
And so I think it's about how do we think about everything that's changed, everything we've learned, everything we've done better, and now we just have opportunities to integrate that into being more in person. And so the folks who work with me are definitely sticking to their tech tools and continuing to integrate those, and then just seeing new opportunities everywhere.
That's good. That's good to hear. Because I've been thinking a lot about like when retail got disrupted with e-commerce, right? Like brick and mortar retail, it was such a like night and day shift. And you look at fundraising in the nonprofit space, and still only like 10%, 12% is online, and the rest is offline, like the equivalent of brick and mortar.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on sort of like how far will it go with it nonprofits? Like how much of digital will be like the pie of fundraising? Like, have we hit sort of like, the capacity, like the threshold, or do you think there's still a lot of room left to go?
Yeah, tons. I mean, I think also when you, like at least the organizations that I work with, the folks who are writing checks tend to be older generations of donors, right? And so I think as like digital adoption takes a bigger role in all of our lives, and the donor population continues to grow as younger and younger people become donors. And, I think there's so much room for growth. I think what's interesting and what, the data doesn't always seem to capture is that I feel like there are also so many new ways of expressing generosity. Like I've been really fascinated with what's been happening since the Ukraine crisis started, and just people expressing generosity by buying digital art on Etsy or giving through Airbnb.org. And I feel like that tells us so much about the digital appetite for donors, but also that nonprofits haven't always done the best job making direct giving easy, or celebrating the small dollar donor, or things like that those types of avenues like do give the opportunity for. So for me, there's like something really like special and possible if we can sort of capture both of those pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. Within your clients, are you seeing any trends that like I didn't realize this was happening, or like anything that's interesting from the cohort of customer or nonprofits that you work with, where you're like, I want to like double click on that's an interesting sort of trend, or anything? And it's kind of like maybe a hard question to answer on the spot, but
I mean, I feel like I'm just continually inspired by the way folks are building partnerships. Like I think that the growth that my folks have seen, particularly with like corporate partnerships, I think even over the last 2 years has been tremendous, and just people getting really creative and thinking about giving like integrated into so many other elements of what they do, whether it is like online shopping. Like for me, I'm like, okay, you're right about that revolution in like e-commerce, right? So that I think has massive implications for us too, because I think people are much more likely to add $1 at checkout than to click the little box on the credit card swipe thing, right? So what does that mean? So I think the thing that surprises me in a really good way is the creativity that partners have been coming to the table with, and just watching that blossom.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things that like I've been seeing is actually like more competition between nonprofit and for-profit, like social good, with a social good mission, or CSR component, and seeing not just the competition between like the nonprofit and the corporation, but actually like the consumer or the donor. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Like, what are your thoughts around sort of that?
Ooh, okay, well, I love that you brought it up. I think it has the potential to really shake up the sector in a positive way if we listen to its teachings, right? Like, I think I was just talking to someone who graduated college, like, I don't know, 12 years after me, and sort of she was talking about, deciding where she wanted to go with her career in a way that she can make a positive impact in the world. And I was sort of saying, when I graduated college, I felt like it was like, if you want to do good, like you go into nonprofit. And that is just not true anymore, right? There's so many ways to make a positive impact. I think it means that there's more competition in the job market. I think that it means that as nonprofits need to get savvier and like have the opportunity to rise to the occasion, to be sort of competitive with applicants, and I think this also sort of begs the question for like, if you are competing for profit that has a really beautiful digital footprint and makes it super easy for people to get involved and express their identity through generosity in that way, nonprofits have to show up for that too.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like? So I think it's a little bit scary because we haven't always seen nonprofits adapt and adopt quickly. But I think if we can really listen to what this is teaching us, there's tremendous opportunity.
Absolutely. I'd like to see nonprofits kind of take the posture of, for example, it's the second time Elon Musk has come up today, but we'll go with it. More so, if you think about how Tesla has basically pushed all mainstream automobile companies to go electric by everyone saying 2030, right? And you look at how did a company disrupt an entire industry so fast? I mean, it's been a decade, maybe a decade. So as a nonprofit leader, the question I'd be asking myself is, how do we disrupt problem X, Y, and Z that we're trying to solve as quickly and as quickly as possible, right? I think that's where I think it doesn't have to be competitive in regards to someone cares about climate change. Do you buy a Tesla or do you donate to your favorite charity working on the issue? I think more so it's the frame of mind of getting to scale and making an actual dent on the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yes.
Yes.
So. I was just reading a statistic that the average donor gives to 5 to 7 organizations. And I think that's interesting, sort of in line with what you're saying. What came up for me when I saw that was, okay, so what this tells me is that donors, if giving builds pieces of identity, of our identity, we're complex people, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to do one thing. We're not going to go to one organization, because we want to express who we are in a lot of different ways. And so that's right. It's not competitive, but it's how can organizations make it really clear that being a part of their work is that people want to say people like me do things this, that Seth Godin quote,
Yeah.
And so that's just about our creativity and connection. And I think not one of the things I think nonprofits fall into a lot is trying to be everything for everyone. And when we've seen these revolutionary brands disrupting spaces, that's not what they've tried to do. They've been really clear about who they're for, and they've trusted that people are going to start to person. I want to be that person, and I'd like to see more of that in our sector.
Interesting, yeah. And I think that pushes nonprofits to have to get more personal, personalize their message, their branding, who they are as an organization, right? I think that's a great point. And I think that's such an important aspect of being a nonprofit in the 21st century, is to be able to relate with your donors in that way. What are you the most excited about with the 6 months, 6.5, I guess 7 months, really? 7 months left in the year. What are you tackling? What's a challenge that you're excited to be addressing? What's something that you're really hoping to just nail in 2022?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm thinking a lot about for nonprofits is I interviewed this woman on the podcast who's a motivational scientist.
Okay.
And she talks about this idea in motivational science of the middle problem. So how we get really motivated at the beginning of any challenge, and then we're very motivated at the end, but motivation wanes significantly in the middle.
Huh.
And she has some strategies for, how to do that kind of on an individual level, right? When we're trying to start a habit or something like that. But I've been thinking a lot about how I feel like the middle problem is stewardship. And so I'm starting to just sort of explore and unpack what that means about how we think about tracking and metrics and fundraiser enablement and behavior and celebration. I think about how many organizations just celebrate or even track the money coming in. And what if we could shift and be tracking fundraiser behavior in all the ways that really matter? Because I think fundraising is so much more than just the moment the money moves into the organization. But sometimes we really compartmentalize it, and then we're missing opportunities.
Yeah. This might be a little bit controversial, but maybe not. This is actually why I have such a big problem with move management, because you're taking a human being from one point to transaction, right? Ideally, very simplified version, that's what moves management is you're trying to get a transaction out of somebody. And if you think about, that's just that's not how you build a relationship, right? It's not how you steward an individual. So it's really interesting. I've been thinking, that's been on my mind of because it comes up and specifically with product, right? It's when fundraisers, when you're going to build a moves management component, And in my head, I'm like, I never want to build it because I actually hate the practice. I think it's not the best way to actually steward a donor. It's a way to track like where someone's maybe at in like the life cycle of giving, but it's not the way you actually steward a donor and build that relationship.
I could not agree more. And I think it's a very like two-dimensional look at everything, right? It's like we just don't know how else to track fundraiser behavior. It's like our best, but it's totally mediocre standard of like evaluating how we're doing these things because we don't have another way to say where we're at, and we're not comfortable saying we don't know where we're at. But the reality is, even in a moves management system, we don't know where we're at.
Yeah.
And so I just wish we were a little bit more honest about that and like let the nuance live there and say like these are human beings and these are human relationships, and how do we celebrate the actions for fundraisers that we know to be the most impactful, be successfully bringing in money in the future, but also that really like honors the relationship in the meantime.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're gonna have some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
There's no wrong or right answer. Okay, so this is just whatever you want. Favorite movie or series?
Ooh, The Usual Suspects is my favorite movie of all time.
Oh, okay, I like that. Tacos or cheeseburgers?
Oh, tacos because I'm vegetarian.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. How long have you been vegetarian for?
Since I was 11.
Since you were 11?
Yeah, I eat fish now. I started eating fish
okay.
a few years ago, but I stopped eating all meat when I was 11, and then just a few years ago.
Was like when you had fish for the first time, was it like a weird, like, was the texture weird, or was it like what you remembered?
It still is a little, like I can't eat anything with like a head on it.
That's good.
It has to be well disguised fish.
Oh, I love it. All right, beach or mountains?
Ooh, mountains.
But
I love them both.
If you had to live somewhere for the rest of your life, mountains.
Mountains,
Interesting.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you like the cold?
No, can it be like lukewarm mountains?
Sure. These are your questions.
My fantasy, right?
Okay. Digital reading or an actual book?
Ooh, actual book.
Actual book.
Yeah.
Football or football?
Football.
Moana or Encanto?
Encanto, and I've literally watched it 74 times in the past 3 weeks.
Do you cry every time you watch it?
It's so wet. The last
so
song, oh my God, I just can't do it.
My kids, they love it.
My daughter Emmy goes, this is the part where mommy cries.
That's cute. Well, Mallory, thank you so much for joining us again on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This was so fun.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Nonstop Nonprofit. This podcast is brought to you by your friends at Funraise, nonprofit fundraising software built by nonprofit people. If you'd like to continue the conversation, find me on LinkedIn or text me at 562-242-8160. And don't forget to get your next episode the second it hits the internets. Go to nonstopnonprofitpodcast.com and sign up for email notifications today. See you next time.